Nick Offerman, welcome back to Bullseye. It's so nice to see you.
Thank you. I love to be here.
Your newest book about woodworking is a book of woodworking projects for adults who are working with children or for children who have the backup of adults. Do you have a favorite project in there?
You know, the one that springs to mind is the kite. The second one that springs to mind is the slapstick, but the kite, it's a box kite.
It opens with the slapstick. That's like, you can tell whose perspective this book is coming from. But tell me about the kite.
The thing about the kite is, you know, the sort of manifesto of the book is there are so many things you can choose to do, especially with your kids or your grownups or your siblings or your neighbors, that aren't curated by Elon. Like they're not a choice you can get on your phone. It's a box kite. It's like making a structure using cork and dowel and paper and glue, and it works incredibly well. Like it's really hard. It's a really idiot-proof kite. And then you have to go outside and like be in the weather and enjoy the park and fly a kite. So it just makes me feel really joyful, and it sort of sums up the manifesto of the book.
When was the last time you flew a kite?
When we were engineering this last fall. It's the kind of thing where once you do it, once you get your kite up in the air, you realize, this is something I can do to keep myself from all the distractions of the world, and also to keep myself, speaking personally of me, out of the pub. Like, not only are these things productive and delightful, but they're also medicinal in that I can't shoot up while I'm flying a kite. I've crunched the numbers.
Did you do any research on kites before you designed this box kite?
No. I mean, in a word, no. This excellent woman who ran my shop for 10 years named Lee Buchanan co-wrote the book with me, and she has two awesome little boys, Demetrius and Simeon, and so they were our main guinea pigs. So she and I, it was really fun putting our knowledge together and our experience over the years to come up with what projects would work as good vehicles to teach different hand tool skills. Generally, woodworkers go to things that I think are a little more stodgy, because they're things that like a grandfather makes for grandkids.
You're talking about little cars.
That's right. Little cars.
Little train
little
engines.
Monochromatic cars, which have their place, and they are inspiring. And we make a vehicle. We make a log truck that specializes in hauling sausages. The kite just came out of the net that we cast of like, what are all the things we can make that doesn't take us outside the realm of the wood shop, which means no knitting, no ceramics, you know. The whole point of the book is to like get your screens, put them in the other room, and like, first of all, take your kid or your kids and just look them in their face. Just look at their face. Even when we're together, we're taught to isolate ourselves and be like, are you okay? Yeah. You okay? Great. All right. I'm going to be doing my Wordle or whatever.
Nick, just you bringing this up made me uncomfortable looking you in the eyes.
I get it. I always remember my dad growing up would shake my hand. Part of it was always, you know, teaching me to shake hands, but then he'd hold on to my hand and I could feel him checking my arm strength and then nodding. And, you know, the first several years, the nods were, yep, you're not there yet. And then eventually in the mid-teens, the nods grew a little more stoic and like, oh, here we go. You can make a living with tools, or you can carry heavy objects.
Not you can defeat me in combat?
No, that...
'cause that's some people's relationship with their dads, not to put too fine a point on it.
For sure. But this book may be a way to avoid that kind of dynamic.
You are not a person with children, unless there's news that I don't know about.
No kids.
Do you think that there is a special relationship in the world with children for the childless person?
These things, I feel like they're spoken about too generally. I feel like at the moment there is a loud conservative voice that says like, if you're not contributing children, to your voting block, you should be exterminated or something.
Voting block is a generous way of putting it, but yeah.
But I feel like it's a very subjective thing. I mean, I have 3 siblings. They all have daughters. So I have a passel of nieces. And my, the way my roll of the dice went, I met Megan later, and we chose to be the kids in our household. And it's been really fun and gratifying, and we have kids in our lives that we can contribute to when we feel bereft in any way. But I feel like generally I have had a wonderful experience with the parents in my life. And so even though I don't have direct kids to pass this on to, having a knowledge of your family and like maintaining a center of affection and morality in a household is something that I want to engender and practice myself.
For a guy who is deeply invested in adulthood, you are also a guy who is deeply invested in childlike behaviors.
For sure. I mean, but that's always been my bag. Like, I think that's how I ended up an entertainer is I was a good student in school. I was a little bit of a class clown. But at the same time, everybody, do we have to take it so seriously? Like, and I learned that from my farm uncles and my mom. They all have this attitude of like, we bust our butts to keep our farm afloat, but like it's a lot more fun, even though we're sweating our keisters off in the shoveling grain in the silo. Let's have some fun, because this is really hard work and depressing. And so I've always just maintained I absolutely want to work as hard as anybody here and do great work, but also let's also have a laugh and not like, because otherwise you end up yelling at each other, and there's no need for that.
Now, you weren't a UCB guy, Upright Citizen Brigade guy. You weren't a Second City guy. You weren't a stand-up comic. When you moved to Los Angeles to be an actor, did you think you were moving to Los Angeles to be a comic actor, or did you think you were moving to Los Angeles to, one of the first jobs you got in LA was on ER? Did you think you were going to just be on ER or equivalent?
It's a great question, and the context is important because I moved here right at the top of 1997. At the time, this was long before the internet took over the world. There were kind of 2 worlds of performance going on. One was centered around Second City and Improv Olympic. It was the pipeline of comedy that famously all these people then rode to Saturday Night Live. I didn't even know that was a choice. If I had known that, I most certainly would have looked into it pretty hard, because I was a pretty big fan of SNL. And I really loved making people laugh, but I didn't do characters or voices per se, or sketches. I worked at the legit theaters, Steppenwolf, Goodman.
I was going to say, you were at the big Chicago legendary theater town, and you were at the serious theaters with capital S, capital T,
right,
town.
When I met Amy Poehler there in the early 90s, and I said, so let me get this straight. You make up in a bar? I perform works of literature in buildings that were designed by an architect. Like, there's this horrible defensive snobbery. So when I moved to LA, I was pretty ignorant. I didn't really know anybody. And I also didn't know that it wasn't a great theater town. I just assumed I was continuing my ascension.
In the American theater?
Yes.
You thought you were going to do Follies at the Pasadena Playhouse?
Or something, yeah. So there was a wonderful casting director named John. I'm blanking on his last name right now. Sorry, John. Who cast ER, and I think then he ended up casting The West Wing. He cast the John Wells shows. And he loved cashing in on Chicago theater actors because we had a great work ethic and we were dependable for dramatic work. So I ended up on ER. And so you do a couple of those. I did Deadwood and The West Wing.
CJ, we'd like to tell you the story of Pluie.
Who's Pluie?
I'm glad you asked.
That's Pluie.
Yes.
Pluie's a wolf?
Yeah, she is.
And you're going to tell me her story?
Jerry. For 4 years, scientists have tracked Pluie as she made her way from Banff National Park in Alberta up and down the Rockies. In that time, she's made 3 round trips between Canada and Wyoming, covering 40,000 square miles.
I reached a point then where I had to say to Amy a few years later, how do I can't even get an audition. Like Will Ferrell just did a basketball movie with 71 men, and I didn't even get an audition for it. And they're like, oh, we didn't know you do comedy, the world said. And so Amy had me come do a couple shows at the UCB theater. And then overnight, the world was like, oh, we'll put him on Parks and Rec. So
and you're like 30, 33 years old or something.
I was 38 when I got Parks and Rec.
This isn't a steak. Why would you call it that on your menu?
I don't know what to tell you, man.
Just give me all the bacon and eggs you have. Wait. I worry what you just heard was, give me a lot of bacon and eggs. What I said was, give me all the bacon and eggs you have. Do you understand?
And then the funny thing is, then I had to convince people that I could do dramatic work. The same people were like, it's as though you do a tennis movie and they're like, well, we're not going to read you for basketball. Aren't you a tennis guy?
Yeah, you're a tennis actor.
Yeah. And then Parks and Rec, even to this day, we constantly have people approaching us saying like, it's one of our comfort shows and it got us through the pandemic and so forth. I mean, that's a dream, but there's a caveat where it's like, all right, you can win the lottery and end up on Seinfeld, but you may then not get a lot more jobs because you're George Costanza, or it's a wonderful problem, I think, to be saddled with. So I'm very grateful since Parks and Rec that the world allows me to continue to work in other genres and mediums.
So years ago, your wife, the comedy genius Megan Mullally, was on our program. And she told a story about the two of you walking down the beach and being essentially discovered by Gary Shandling.
That's right.
Tell me what happened from your perspective.
The Gary Shandling thing was crazy. R.I.P. Gary. Because, in terms of like, I guess I'm going to move to L.A. and try to like get work as an actor, there were things in my life that were saying, bad idea, guy. But then there were little moments, for example, where I'd get invited to do a reading, or I would do some little job and just get a compliment from the right person where I was like, well, Bill Macy said he thought I made funny faces or whatever. But this is so standalone. This is the unicorn of these experiences. Megan and I were out in Malibu on a date, sunset, walking along the ocean, ankle deep in the surf, and somebody's approaching. It's lovely. We're holding hands, and somebody's approaching, and it's Shandling, who I hadn't met. Megan had maybe met a couple times at like award shows. And Gary was like, hi, Megan. Like they did the thing that famous people do where it's like, hi, we're not friends, but like, I love you. And he kind of, I caught his eye. He looked at me a couple times and he was like, what do you do? And I was like, I'm an aspiring actor. And he just said, he looked at me in the eye and said, stick around. You've got something. You're gonna do something. And I mean, I almost started crying just recounting it. Like that was so insane that he did that. It was so important and generous. I mean, that bought me like 4 years of like my landlord screaming at me. And I was like, hey man, Shandling said, stick around. So tell it to him.
That's unbelievable.
It was incredible. I mean, because like I said, Mr. Mullally, like my wife is a walking Mel Brooks movie, like, and I'm like, my thing is different and quieter. Living with Megan, who in a creative, artistic way, she has aspired to sophistication her whole life. Musically, the things she reads, she just loves just the outfit she creates every single day. She's trying to ascend. And so the fact that, especially when we met, I was this sweaty carpenter who had just finished putting the plywood on the walls at the theater. And then we sat down and did a table read, and somehow that she chose me. That was also just a similar really big deal where I was like, well, she thinks I'm funny or good or something. So I'll keep doing the dishes.
It's interesting to me, the corollary career that you've had in carpentry and woodworking, because it, for many years, was central to your financial life before you were one of the stars of a long-running hit sitcom. And then in the years since you became one of the stars of a long-running hit sitcom, it has been central to your emotional life, like your creative life, like the two things, you were building decks or whatever for many years in order to make sure that you had enough money to pay the rent while you went to auditions for ER. And then eventually you were working all day on Parks and Recreation, and you knew that you had, back in Atwater Village, a warehouse full of wood that could be your rock. Mixed metaphor, apologies.
It's uncanny. It's something I think about a lot. When parents say to me, how do I get my kid where you are? Can I send my kid to your agent? And I say, well, the first funny answer is study woodworking if you want to have a successful acting career.
I mean, it worked for Harrison Ford.
It is me. There's the big three, Harrison and Jesus and myself, the showbiz carpenters.
Uh-huh.
But
known for razzle dazzle.
I do say to them, pick a theater that you like and show up and make yourself a nuisance. Just keep showing up. You'll get to know the front of house manager. You'll get to go around back, see the dumpster situation, who's sweeping what, where. And eventually there's going to be an opportunity where you can help somebody do something, carry some scenery in, sweep a floor or something. Let them know I'd love to help out if I can. Here, hand out these programs, whatever. You will be put to work, you will be valued. And I was brought up with this work ethic. I went to a very nice theater school at the University of Illinois, and they summarily said immediately, you're not very good. So you're not going to be cast. But as part of the program, everybody had to take a lighting class, a costume class, a scenery class. So almost right away in the scenery class, I was like, oh yeah, like this. And I hammered a flat together with nails, and there was such a record scratch, and all these kids from the suburbs were like,
nails?
How did you do that? And the guy running the shop, Ken Egan, was like, hey, great. I'll pay you wages. I had worked as a framing carpenter, so I simply had those tool skills. And that, as you pointed out, I was able to pay my rent well into my 20s, making scenery in Chicago while I worked on plays. And then even when I got to LA, it turned into decks and cabins and then fine furniture.
There is something that I was thinking about as I was listening to you talk to my public radio colleague, the brilliant Krista Tippett. I was thinking about your commitment to the rural/agrarian values of your youth, whether it is field work or carpentry or the kind of librarian and teacher jobs that are endemic in your family as well. And the stagecraft and acting that you've done since. I had a job as an apprentice stage electrician when I was in high school. And what I loved about it was very similar to what I loved about acting in a show, which was it is so satisfying to show up on time, work really hard with a bunch of people who are also dedicated to the same thing, who also showed up on time. Because if anybody doesn't show up on time, they're out on the street.
Yeah.
Because everybody has to get those flats up by a certain amount of time. Every gel has to be set.
The curtain's going up at 8 o'clock.
And it's really hard work. I would never diminish the work of an actor or a craftsperson in entertainment because it is genuinely very hard work. But it's really satisfying and rewarding.
It is. I mean, it sounds a little facile, but it's really incredibly gratifying to put on a show. You need a collaboration. Even a one-person show is actually a 17-person show. There's just one of you on stage. But to see that happen and to see the effect your collaboration has on an audience, Aristotle wrote about it. It's like this is medicine. We get up and make dumb shows for each other, and it actually heals us. It's a way to improve our society. And just to finish that last thread, the crazy ending of the conflation of my tool life and my acting life is when I got cast as Ron, and they ended up making Ron a woodworker because of I was always at the shop. We ended up shooting a few episodes of Parks and Rec at my wood shop. Like, Ron's shop is my shop, and Ron's canoes are my canoes that I built. And so by now, my wood shop that is still offermanwoodshop.com, we are making beautiful custom pieces here in Los Angeles. It's just a huge part of my life. At one point, I was feeling guilty because I'm traveling the world, performing, entertaining people as a humorist, and encouraging them to garden, among other things. Get to know your food, know some farmers in your area. While I'm not doing that, I'm traveling the world entertaining you. And it always weighed on me. My parents are amazing gardeners, and I have not had a garden because I'm never at home much. But then I realized that my wood shop is my garden, and these employees that I have, and that you can garden in many ways, not just growing rutabagas.
I imagine at some point you look down while you're on stage and you're like, oh, right, I made this ukulele.
Yes, I do. And the next big thing on my list at the shop is to make a guitar, because I think I can do a whole evening about this guitar that I made, and I'll play some songs. And I'll speak slowly, and people will be bemused and hopefully not get angry.
What other things do you like to do with your hands besides woodwork?
Well, I think everyone has a gift. Everyone can do something with their hands. And my sensei just passed away this year. His name's Shozo Sato. And I have 3 scrolls that he painted me in Japanese calligraphy hanging in my shop. And one of them says, "The way of the arts is the way of the Buddha." And what that means, in my clumsy interpretation, is that the art in you, it's your responsibility to discover what it is. It might be child rearing, cooking, sewing, accounting, woodworking, performing, dancing, whatever it is. Figure out what it is, and the world will tell you. They're like, wait a second, was that you whistling? Do that again. That's your thing. And whatever it is, the way of the art is the way of God. It's the part of you that's touching God. And so your service to other people, which is what life is all about, is to give of that gift, however you end up doing so. The hand-eye coordination that we have, these opposable thumbs, the things we can do with them, is a gift that is more and more atrophying as corporations get us to just sit there and look at screens in whatever way we do. But you can make lasagna, you can knit, you can embroider, you can make cowboy boots, you can massage. There are many forms of massage. In my great theater program, we took a semester of deep tissue massage. I'm announcing this to really every college program. Teach your kids a semester of deep tissue massage, because whatever your students are doing, they're stressed out. But even to this day, decades later, I regularly massage my wife legitimately. I mean, if she has sore body parts, I regularly give her massages. I love to cook. I love to tinker with my vehicles, like anything that makes me feel like I could hold my head up around my charismatic Illinois family. And I love playing music. Talk about the way of the art is the way of the Buddha. The fact that, like, this clumsy donkey can play some chords on a guitar and make it sound like an Elvis Costello song is like, what? So, that to me, that sends me.
I watched a craft in America about a woman who makes cowboy boots named Lisa Sorrell.
In Guthrie, Oklahoma, I believe.
Man, these cowboy boots were out of control.
Oh my God. Because of the crazy place that our civilization has come to, the idea that I make furniture out of pieces of trees, this is something that families all used to know how to do. You had trees earmarked on your farm. Okay, eventually our grandkids will probably make a kitchen table out of that oak. And it was called coppicing. It's a way that you maintain your woodland so that it keeps growing and in perpetuity, so that you can get firewood and building wood. But now I run a company where for me to make you a three-legged footstool will cost you the price of like a used car or a pair of these cowboy boots, where it's like, that's something that drives me crazy, that we make a beautiful version, but a quotidian product, something that is just a dining table that I want to be in your family for generations. I can't make it affordably for a working class family. And that drives me crazy. But that's happened to our food, and it's happened to our household accessories. Everything is meant to go to the landfill, and that's how the billionaires stay in control. And so this book announces itself as a radical manifesto of, it's anti-corporate. It's making your own life. It's not putting money in Elon's pocket, but instead keeping it in your own while you play cards on the table you made with your kids.
When I was in college, this girl named Rebecca was sitting with me in the dining room, and she said to me, I have a hard time hanging out with you and your friend Gene and Jordan. And I said, why is that? And she said, well, I can't tell if you're joking or not. And I said, well, I mean, we're both joking and not joking. Out of that came a sort of joke, not joke cultural movement that we called the New Sincerity, which was about rejecting the sort of ironic defensive attachment that we saw in the generation before us, yours, and embracing Bootsy Collins, things that are both for real and ridiculous.
I've just always considered you a peer, and so
no, I'm just bald.
It surprises me to learn that we're in different generations, but also I feel like if I had sat at your lunch table, I would have known when you were kidding, like that, because I had the same problem. Like those of us that were aware of irony and like holding ourselves apart from the Hallmark generation.
I think that in some ways, the way that you have pursued your career and your public persona is reflective of this set of imaginary ideals that I jokingly set up 25 years ago, in that you are deeply sincere in your convictions and completely unconcerned about being ridiculous. Like you embrace ridiculousness.
Sure. I mean, it's complicated. I'm a human being, and so I have things that I feel very strongly about, and so I'm often earnest, and then I feel myself being earnest, and I'm like, but don't forget, I'm a farting donkey. Like, I always open with my fallibility. I'm like, look, if anybody's gonna up here, it's probably me. That said, I never dreamed. I mean, when I was 30 and I met Megan Mullally and became Mr. Mullally and was like the husband I would go to see every taping of Will and Grace. And it was my PhD program, just getting to be there on the floor and watch them masterfully make that show. And I got to be on ER. I couldn't believe the pinnacle at which my life had peaked. I was like, this is far beyond my wildest dreams. And so part of shouldering that is maintaining like a firm foothold in this earnestness, where I'm like, if I continue to write and talk about these issues, as human beings, we always have to keep saving ourselves, and I'm my first target. So it's to keep me on the straight and narrow. I learned so much from my collaborators on Parks and Rec, where we're like, oh, we're making, a top show. In certain ways, we're the top TV comedy professionals at the moment. We're among them. And I can literally rip a huge fart right now and not even, like, Amy will be upset, and she's not wrong. And nonetheless, I won't lose my job or even any points. And I'm all those things, you know what I mean? And I know that they're not all great things, but my heart's in the right place, and I want everybody to have health care.
Nick Offerman, you are a gifted deep tissue masseuse. I've been preparing for a tough interview all day, and I'm a little tense. You wouldn't have a massage in you for your local public radio host, would you?
Sure. Would you like me to climb on board?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Bring the headphones. Thank you.
My headphones on.
Very professional.
The epicenter. It's all about pressure points.
Right.
So most people carry their stress up in this neighborhood. It's the neck to shoulder matrix. All right. So I want you to just kind of relax and focus on those and breathe in deeply through your nose. And then as you exhale, try and let all of that sensation out of your body while maintaining your posture. But you feel like you do a good job of not holding on to too much of your tension.
That's very kind of you. I let it all out into migraine headaches once a day or so.
I mean, it's not lost on me, what's painted on the door of your office, and that is maximum fun. And so not unlike me, you've chosen to perform a very serious service. You talk on the radio and produce radio content for NPR. You put it right on your placard. We're going to have fun while we do this serious business of disseminating information.
Recreational.
I'm going to give you a little bit of this.
Woo.
Just a taste.
Wow, the Nick Offerman experience here in the studios of Bullseye with Jesse Thorn.
Was it effective? I don't want you.
It was genuinely effective. No, I was like, let's just stick with this instead of going back to doing a radio show. But obviously, we had stuff to do.
Well, I don't need the affirmation. I just want your audience to understand that it's very.
No, that was a for real. That was a for real, genuine experience. That was not all just sort of like press around and see what happens. Well, Nick Offerman, it is always so great to have you on the show and so nice to see you in general. Thank you for coming by.
My pleasure. Right back at you. Thank you for your work.